Okay, raise your, yeah, you're welcome.
All right, better? Yes. All right, so I said, as usual, I'm going to talk faster than I should and try and cram too much into a little bit of time. And I'm basically going to tell you what I've been working on for the last 7 years in the next 20 minutes or so. So first of all, before I dive into this topic of what to eat, right? Everyone wants to know, so what do I do about all this stuff you've been talking about? Before I dive into that, I want to say food is about a lot more than satiety. Food is not just to make us feel full. We eat when we're nervous, we eat when we're happy, we eat at parties, we eat for a million different reasons, and this is a really complicated topic. It is cultural, it is philosophical, it is not just about what makes us feel full. Try to keep an open mind. My father said, I'd rather die 10 years early than eat your rabbit food. You know, I had a patient, she had multiple sclerosis. This is back when I worked with more general diseases. And I said, hey, you know, there have been, I think, 18 or so studies now that have linked dairy consumption to multiple sclerosis. My recommendation is you stop eating dairy. And she said, I would rather spend the rest of my life in this wheelchair than give up ice cream. Right? I would handle that patient very differently today than I did at that time. But it really is something I've given thought to now for 20 years. And the point is, we all say that on some level, right? We make excuses for consuming things that we know are probably not in our best interest. And we all have a line that we're willing to draw in the sand and say, you know what, I don't need my health to be A+. I'll take a B+ and a little bit of ice cream, right? So you pick and choose. I am not here to tell you what you have to do. I am the messenger. I'm going to tell you what the data says. You do what you want with that data. We've already talked about a lot of the symptoms associated with malnutrition. I'm not going to get into that. There are a lot of conventional docs. It's called level 1 evidence, right? We know that something really works when we do a double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized trial, right? That's level 1 evidence, and that's the standard of care in today's state of science. The problem is that's not possible with diet. We have never taken a group of 18-year-olds and randomized them to tobacco smoking. You smoke fake cigarettes, you smoke real cigarettes, you smoke no cigarettes, and we will decide, and neither you nor I will know who's smoking what, and we'll see if you develop lung cancer. Right? There are ways that we can learn without doing double-blind placebo-controlled trials. We all believe that DES causes birth defects. We all believe that tobacco smoke increases your risk of lung cancer. But none of that knowledge came about via a double-blind placebo-controlled trial. So there are times, practically, ethically, financially, where double-blind placebo controls are not possible. I cannot have you eating placebo beef, real carrots, placebo carrots, and neither you nor I will know what we're eating for the next 20 years, and we'll see who gets Parkinson's. We will never, ever, ever have a double-blind placebo-controlled trial of diet for a whole bunch of logical reasons. So we have to be willing to accept observational research as a way to do this. We might be able to do some intervention trials where we take half this group and we teach them how to eat a healthy diet and compare them to people who are eating the standard American diet, and we can start to answer the question, if you change your diet, will it improve outcomes? But we still don't know if the change is because of the carrots or because of the broccoli or because you decided to make a change, right? So we have to look at research a slightly different way. So before we move on, I'll get to that in a minute. So there are 1,000 options out there. There are really, really smart people who are well-informed, and there are some neurologists who are very well-informed about nutrition. And guess what? They all have an opinion, right? And not all of those opinions gel. And too often, patients are in this position where you have to decide between Dr. Bredesen and Dr. Perlmutter and Dr. Walls, Dr. Gundry, and you need to pick who has the most best around their book for the best marketing or the best, most compelling case. And it's not fair to the patient to have to shop around to a whole bunch of smart opinions and pick the one that feels best, right? So what we tried to do is to get my opinion out of it. I didn't want to be in another opinion that you have to sift through. So I designed a study that simply asked the question, can we measure the diversity within this group, and can we find differences among the people with slow progression and the people with fast progression? These slides are available. I would love if those people with Parkinson's in this room would join this study. That is the link. It's free to join. It takes about an hour twice a year. And the more people who participate, the better our data becomes. How many people are already in the study? Thank you. It is because of you that we know what we know. This is big data and there's power in numbers. I'm asking you to teach us what's working, right? So the first problem we had is we have to measure Parkinson's disease severity. Please raise your hand if you think that the UPDRS that we do in the office accurately reflects your symptoms. Okay, so we all agree that's not the best outcome measure. It doesn't ask about bowels. It doesn't ask, there are so many things that get missed on that, and it fluctuates over the course of the day. So we wanted to develop an outcome measure that was patient-centered, that included non-motor symptoms. We had to be able to quantify it. It has to progress over time because we know this disease progresses over time, and it has to correlate with the existing measures of Parkinson's severity. So we set out to make that scale. Someone asked about a checklist before you come in. Every one of our patients, before they come in, we made them go to the website propd.org. You can do it for free and get your score. And they print it out before they come in, and I can, in a glance, see where the problem areas are. I can see how severe this person's symptoms are compared to another person diagnosed 7 years ago. And we can kind of start to see, are you doing better than average, worse than average? Where are most of your symptoms coming from? And it kind of helps guide our treatment visit. The problem, and so the way this is there are 35 common symptoms on Parkinson's. It takes about 5 minutes to do. If you don't have the symptom, you click the bar on the left. If the symptom is severe, you click on the right. No numbers, you just kind of go ish, right? So what we learned is that, as you know, the symptoms are tremendously diverse. We can make graphs of 10 different people's charts, and you will see the symptoms of this disease, the burden of disease, is different from person to person. And this is really, I agree with Dr. Rizak, but we need to personalize medicine. That's really the future here. You can see kind of the burden of where the symptoms are coming from. There are ways we can graph it and kind of see where it's coming from. But what we want to know is it valid? A lot of scientists have a really hard time with patient-reported outcomes. So here's the question. Can we trust you to tell us how severe your disease is? Right? Are you right when you tell us it's getting better or it's getting worse, right? Are patients accurate? So what we did is we took our first 1,000 people who completed this survey and we compared it to other measures of Parkinson's disease severity. This turns out you all know how you're doing. Shocking. In fact, I would argue this is the gold standard. All the other tests should try and compare to this. At the end of the day, the only thing that matters is how the patient feels. If you say, I don't have much of a tremor, I don't have sleep problems, I don't have bowel problems, I have a lot of energy, mission accomplished. I don't really care what some of the other measures say. If the patient says, I feel excellent, right? But what we did is we correlated this with other outcome measures. It correlates with all of the conventional measures that we use in the research studies. And most importantly, what we learned is it correlates with quality of life. The higher the number on the PRO-PD, the worse your quality of life. For those of you who, you can get your scale for free, and I have these little cards out in the waiting room. You can track your symptoms. You don't need me, you don't need a doc. You can just go to the website and set some goals. I also think that this taps into people's inner competitiveness, right? You know, if you're 1,000 today, learn that, see where your symptoms are, and try and figure out, let's work on sleep, let's work on bowels, and let's try and get that number down below 700 in the next 6 months. And I like getting a little competitive about this. We talked about most of the symptoms being non-motor. But what I'm about to talk to you about now is really simply the data among people who have a diagnosis of Parkinson's disease. All we asked, is there something different about these people who seem to not be progressing compared to these people with a more rapidly progressing disease? It's a simple, common sense question that nobody had ever answered. Association does not mean causation, right? We don't know that broccoli makes your disease progress slower. All I'm saying here is that the people with the most slowly progressing disease seem to be eating more broccoli, right? And so you have to decide for yourself whether this makes sense or not. An example of this is one of the cooking your own food. People who cook their own food have a slower rate of progression. It might be that there's something called sattva, or cooking, investing, and being thoughtful about where you shop and cooking your own food actually does translate to more nutrient-dense food. It could also be that people with a little bit more mobility and less apathy are more motivated to cook their own food. It has nothing to do with cooking your own food that slows the disease. It's that people in better shape cook more of their own food, right? So this is what I mean by the cause and effect thing. Still, I always joke, if I had a disease like this and the data said, hey man, everybody with a pet turtle seems to not be progressing, I'd probably get a pet turtle. Consider the risk, consider the benefits. We don't need to understand it to do it, right? So you have to decide, hey, how hard would it be for me to eat out a little bit less, cook a little bit more of my own food? Mischley's data may or may not be crazy, but she might be onto something, right? And so this is for you to decide what to do with the data. But cooking your own food seems to matter. Eating organic seems to matter. There is a ton of data that says pesticide exposure is associated with Parkinson's disease. Our data suggests people who try to eat organic have a slower progressing disease. Again, all of these data have been adjusted for age, gender, income, years since diagnosis, so we tried to even the playing field because organic food is more expensive. It could be an income thing. The thing I want to point out about the organic food, because this kind of does make sense, what I want to point out is the way we structure the statement in our study is not, I eat organic food 100% of the time. What we say is true or false. I try to eat organically grown foods when possible. When people answer true to that statement, the people who say true have a statistically slower progressing disease than people who say false. So all I'm asking is that you try, okay? Here is the summary. This is the cheat sheet. This slide got slipped in here, but I'm just going to go through the list now. We'll get to all of these individually. I'll do it again, actually. I'll have that whole list for you available. Buying local seems to matter. We ask people about shopping at co-ops and farmers markets and things like that. That seems to make a difference. Again, do I think that there's something at a farmer's market that is protecting you against progression? Actually, probably not. I mean, it might be that there is a little more nutritional value in the foods that have been transported less far and things like that. It may also be that the people who are shopping at farmers markets made a decision to invest in their health, eat a different way, and take different steps for a healthier lifestyle, right? So we could be seeing some personality themes, some personal empowerment, a decision to eat differently. So here is the list of the foods associated with slower Parkinson's progression. And I'm going to go through this stuff kind of fast because I really want to save time for the drug-nutrient interactions. Fresh veggies, fresh fruits, nuts and seeds, non-fried fish, olive oil, coconut oil, wine, spices, fresh herbs, and green tea. Not a bad prescription, right? This is also the diet that has pretty much been shown to protect against Parkinson's disease. This is also the diet that has been shown to protect against Alzheimer's disease. This is also the diet that has been shown to protect against cardiovascular disease and cancer. So when we talk about side effects, I would argue the side effect of this diet would also be decreasing a lot of your risk of a lot of those other conditions. I'm not going to go into all of the reasons fresh fruit could be good. These slides are available. You can look through some of my thinking on this. Fresh vegetables have a ton of prebiotics. Non-fried fish Somebody asked me about mercury in fish. Environmental Working Group has a really excellent consumer guide to eating fish. They tell you which fish is high or low in mercury, high or low in PCBs, which kind of fish to choose. Environmentally conscious of what fish are being overfished or have plenty in surplus. And so that is the best list I've ever found in terms of guiding your fish choices. Nuts and seeds, so easy to throw on what you're doing. You know, this is a picture of some sesame seeds sprinkled on toasted quinoa. Olive oil and coconut oil is a great water substitute. We talked about dairy being associated with faster Parkinson's progression. It is really easy to replace butter with olive oil and coconut oil. The other thing I'll say, a lot of you have problems with weight loss. The trick, the secret to gaining a little more weight is fat. Fat has twice as many calories per gram as protein and carbohydrates. And so if your goal is to put on a couple more pounds, the best way for you to do that is with a little bit of extra fat, right? And the beauty of fat is it increases satiety, it fills you up, it's calorie dense, it's nutrient dense, and it won't interfere with your medication, right? That's a big part. We'll get to that in a minute. Fresh herbs, I just made a list of the ones that happen to be growing in my yard right now. And I do not have a green thumb. This is what will survive even if you water it twice a year. Oh, turmeric, I heard that. Yeah, that's not growing in my garden, but it's good to have. We'll get to that in a minute. Spices, you know, again, I have friends that cut up an apple every day. They sprinkle cinnamon on it and take that to work as a snack. So all day long at work, they're eating an apple with cinnamon, or they'll have a bowl of oatmeal. You know, put some cinnamon on there, put some, you know, have cinnamon clove tea. There's so many ways to slip herbs and spices and nuts and seeds into the diet you're already eating. We don't need huge radical shifts in diet. We are just trying to stack the deck in your favor with more of the good things. There are so many different reasons why we think some of these foods are useful. But if you remember, we were talking about what causes Parkinson's disease, and we talked about oxidation. That F2 isoprostanes test was a measure of how rancid are you. Well, the treatment for people with too many free radicals is to increase their intake of antioxidants, right? It's one of the best things we can do. Turns out some of the most potent antioxidants are curcumin, which is the molecule that comes from turmeric. Resveratrol comes from grapes and red wine. Melatonin is the most powerful antioxidant in the body. That comes from a good night's sleep. Flavonoids are in green tea and berries and soy. And glutathione comes in any uncooked fresh fruit and vegetable, but it's highest in avocado, asparagus, and potatoes. Right? Wine, our research very clearly says beer and liquor are not associated one way or the other with Parkinson's progression, but wine seems to be associated with better outcomes over time. This is just me throwing out an idea as to what's going on, but there is something called, this is a polyphenol list. I didn't write it on here, but the word is ORAC, O-R-A-C, and it's actually, you can measure the antioxidant content of different foods. Right, and so you can go and see, you know, look at how many antioxidants, cloves, a cup of Bengal spiced tea can be a game changer in terms of your total daily antioxidant intake. This is my daughter in Nice. We don't eat a lot of ice cream, and we have a rule, we behave at home so we can do whatever we want when we're on vacation. And so this was gelato with whipped cream. So foods associated with faster Parkinson's progression. Red meat, processed meat, dairy, specifically cheese, yogurt, milk, and ice cream. Chicken, pork, fried foods, soda, especially diet soda, canned fruits, canned vegetables, and pasta. I'll get to it in a minute, but we don't know what's cause and effect, right? My first thought was that people who are in lower income brackets eat more canned foods, but we adjusted for income and that association with canned foods was still there. I've had a couple toxicologists reach out to me. They, you know, some think it's the bisphenol A in the lining, some think it's the aluminum in the cans. Other people think it's the foods that are most heavily sprayed with pesticides that wind up in cans. We don't know. I'm doing this research hoping somebody else will come along after me and try and figure out what it is.
What about eggs?
Pardon?
Eggs.
Eggs are neutral. Butter was not associated with Parkinson's progression, but butter is really difficult to study. When I ask people about butter intake, it is probably one of the least reliable things on the survey. People can have green beans at a restaurant and a croissant and have